Imagine this. There's a moment when you realize things just don't fit anymore. And you know you can't keep going the same way. You need a place to work that's quiet enough to focus and private enough to start. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Just a small and very ordinary need. But somehow the simplest things are often the ones people manage to make more complicated than ever. Of course, you don't need a castle or a skyscraper, you just need a place to work. You just need a desk, a chair, and Wi-Fi strong enough to get things done. But whenever you think about renting an office, it suddenly feels complicated, with long contracts and piles of paperwork. This is where people start feeling exhausted. Not because the work itself is hard, but because everything surrounding it, from paperwork to deposits, slowly drains their energy away. And of course the solution doesn't appear instantly, but then a company shows up, opens the door, and says things can actually be much simpler if you choose the right way. Don't worry, just focus on your work and we'll take care of everything else. You just show up, sit down, and start working the way you do best. And at this point, it's honestly hard not to nod in agreement, because it speaks directly to what so many people are missing in the middle of daily complexity, and that is simplicity. It sounds like a pretty normal service, doesn't it? But it's not just about renting offices. They claim they're building a community. And in that moment, a lot of people nod along, even if they're not entirely sure what they just heard. They don't nod because they fully understand what was just said. They nod because they want to believe that somehow things can become simpler and easier than the way they've been used to enduring every day. The man behind WeWork is Adam Neumann, the company's co-founder. Adam is tall, confident when he speaks, and clearly made for the stage. Some people don't need to say much at all. They just stand there with a quiet kind of confidence. And that alone is enough to make everyone else fall silent and want to listen to whatever comes next. And what's interesting is that Adam doesn't talk about desks. He talks about people and how they connect. For Adam and WeWork, a workplace isn't just a place to work. It's a space where people meet, connect, and create value beyond what happens at a desk.
Okay.
They say they'll create a real working environment, a community where people come for the work, but stay for the connection. Of course, when people hear something like that, they want to do their work in an environment filled with connection and motivation, instead of mechanically repeating the same tasks every single day. With WeWork, they position their vision as the future of work. The future is always an attractive word, but rarely does anyone truly stop to ask what kind of future it actually is. But Adam knows exactly how to make people stop and truly listen to him. People start nodding along, not because they fully understand, but because they don't want to be the only one left out. Maybe it's because everyone wants to believe in a better workplace, or maybe it's simply because WeWork did such a good job telling their story. Now here's what really matters. When a story is told convincingly enough, people tend to focus on the vision in front of them and quietly overlook the details that actually matter most. The first thing they do? Rent big buildings. And those contracts last 10 to 15 years. Contracts lasting 10 to 15 years made many believe WeWork was truly serious and committed long-term to its vision. They turn it into impressive workspaces that feel like an ideal environment. The spaces they create truly feel different, modern, open, and inspiring enough to make many believe this could be the ideal place to work. After that, they rent it out monthly. And this is the key point. Cash can come in quickly through monthly rentals, but behind it are long-term commitments and very real risks. WeWork commits to buildings for 10 to 15 years, while customers pay month by month. If they leave, the long-term costs remain, and that gap is the real risk. When cash flow is steady, everything seems fine. But the moment it slows down, the risk becomes visible. Clearly, this isn't tech, it's real estate, just wrapped in a more compelling story. And when the story is persuasive enough, people start seeing it as something entirely different, even though the core never really changed. But WeWork isn't selling space. They're selling the feeling of being part of a creative community. The office here isn't just a place to work. It's a place where you become a better, more accomplished version of yourself professionally. You're not renting an office. You're renting a feeling. A carefully crafted feeling, designed to make you believe you're in the right place. With all of that, investors began to see a chance to make a lot of money. They believed that what WeWork was building wasn't just ordinary real estate, but a chance to make a lot of money from the community WeWork was creating. But somehow, WeWork positioned itself as a tech company, even though its business was basically real estate. By positioning itself as a tech company, WeWork changed how people perceived it, and as a result, its valuation was pushed much higher. And with that perspective, the idea of losses almost disappeared for WeWork. When a company is valued so highly on promises about the future, the very real issues in the present start to be downplayed, sometimes even blindly ignored. It sounds reasonable. It sounds very promising. At least, before you look at the numbers. But then SoftBank showed up, and everything suddenly felt bigger, more serious. Even SoftBank placed its trust in WeWork. From that moment on, investors' belief was no longer cautious or exploratory, but a serious and public commitment. And once they stepped in with that level of confidence, the very notion of risk seemed to fade into the background, hardly considered in any meaningful way. They were completely captivated by WeWork's vision. When a giant like SoftBank had already placed its trust in WeWork, other investors following along almost felt inevitable, and in investors' eyes, a rain of money seemed about to pour. And then $47 billion. That was WeWork's valuation. $47 billion wasn't reality. It wasn't about what the company had already built. The real question was that ever its true value? When belief reaches its peak, investors become almost certain WeWork will explode. But it is the real conditions and core fundamentals that ultimately decide whether that explosion truly happens. But what puzzled people the most was Adam Neumann buying private homes. And then he leased those very homes he had just bought back to WeWork. One person on both sides of the same contract, CEO and landlord at once. On paper, it was legal. In governance, that's where the line blurred. And money from WeWork flows to Adam. It sounds legal, the paperwork is complete, and no one calls it wrong, but it still doesn't feel like how a CEO should behave. Meanwhile, WeWork is still losing a significant amount of money, without any real profit. While the company is losing money, and the pressure weighs on the entire system, on the other side, the man in charge remains calm, as if those losses don't affect him at all. And Adam still had promises to keep the belief alive. But when the story stopped feeling perfect, belief began to fade. When the wrong decisions start to surface, people realize things have gone too far, and from that moment on, collapse is no longer a possibility, but only a matter of time. The truth began to unravel when WeWork decided to go public, and for the first time, they had to reveal the numbers. And for the first time, the world saw the truth about WeWork. A struggling company, with losses growing larger and larger, investors begin to panic. What they feared has finally happened. And this time, Adam still speaks with confidence. But the numbers are right there. And the belief in his story begins to fall apart. The $47 billion valuation collapses. $47 billion. Did WeWork really deserve that number? Or was this collapse already written in the way the company had been run from the start? And the pressure eventually forces Adam Neumann to step down as CEO. No one calls Adam into the room. While he's not there, the decision is made to remove him as CEO. No argument needed. The ambition was too big. The expectations were even bigger. And everything collapsed. When the truth could no longer be hidden. And just like that, everything is truly over. But everyone knows Adam left with a massive payout. Meanwhile, most WeWork employees are laid off. It's hard not to feel for the employees who truly believed in WeWork. They thought they were building something big. Yet in the end, they were the ones who had to leave. WeWork still exists, still operating, but much more quietly. No one talks about a grand future anymore, and no one knows how much of the original vision is left. WeWork didn't fail because the idea was bad. In fact, the idea sounded pretty compelling. The problem was the story it was told so smoothly that no one felt the need to question it. No one asked where the money was going. No one asked how much the company was losing every month. And strangely, no one asked when it would actually start making money. Instead, people heard about vision, about the future, about community. But in the end, a company can't survive on a story alone. Because in business, belief may attract people at first, but only real numbers can keep them there.